on guys, the Comics Kid 2099 here. Today I want to talk to you about Injustice, Gods Among Us, the complete Year 1 collection. This is written by Tom Taylor with a whole bunch of artists. I do not mean to give the shaft to any of these artists, but there are like a dozen artists that worked on this book, and they're not all listed on the cover, so I'm not going to try and remember all the artists that worked on this book. But if you have been living under a rock for like the last 10 years, there was a video game that I have never played called Injustice, Gods Among Us. And long story short, it involved characters from the DC universe going to an alternate universe where Superman was an evil dictator who had taken over the planet with various other members of the Justice League. And it was set 5 years after Superman's wife Lois had died with her unborn child, with their unborn child. And so this is basically filling in the gaps in between Superman's wife Lois dying and the events of that video game. There were 5 years, so there's going to be 5 years of comics, and this is the first year. Now, I am absolutely, completely, 100% done with evil Superman. I am so sick and tired of seeing it, and it's not even that I'm tired of seeing it, it's that it happens a lot. I can think of a whole bunch of examples of evil Superman fairly recently that I'm just sick and tired of seeing it. It was in Batman vs. Superman. We had a hint of it. It was in Earth 2, which I believe the stuff with evil Superman there was also written by Tom Taylor, which is kind of strange, although part of that may have been set up by James Robinson, I can't remember, but there was an evil Superman there. We had 2 separate evil Supermen in the DCAU. It happens quite a bit, but if I absolutely had to have an evil Superman, I would want it to be this version. I kind of like that Tom Taylor is not just immediately flipping a light switch and saying, okay, Lois and their unborn child dies. He immediately starts tearing up stuff and killing everybody. It doesn't quite do that. It's a very slow progression to what we see in the video game. And while I've never played the video game, I did watch a little bit of the cutscenes from that to kind of get a feel for this world before I started reading this book. And I like that it's not immediately saying, okay, everybody turns dark as soon as Lois Lane dies. It's a slow progression, and I like that. If you look at something like the Civil War comic from Marvel, I didn't really care for that story. Now, it's been several years since I've read it, but one thing I didn't like was that it tries to shove a superhero battle basically involving everyone in the Marvel Universe into about 6 issues. And yeah, you have all these tie-in stories here and there, but the main thrust of the event was in 6 issues, and it feels like something that involves so many different characters should take a lot longer than just 6 issues. And that's what we've got going on here. This right here is 13 issues, and this is just year 1. Then there's also years 2 through 5, and so there's a lot of ground to cover here, and Tom Taylor is not speeding things up. He's taking his time, and I really like that. Now, it's not perfect. There are some things here that I think are a little bit silly. For example, the reveal that before Lois died, apparently Superman and Lex Luthor were BFFs. I don't know why. I don't know if that was just so that, well, this is an alternate reality. We're going to do some things a little differently than the main DC universe. I know that Lex was allied with Superman, kind of, sort of, in the Injustice game, but you wouldn't think that that's necessarily because they were buddies before Lois died. I thought that this was basically supposed to be the DC universe, and then you have a divergence point, but now it seems like there are things that were different about this DC universe even before that divergence point. Also, early in the book, Aquaman suddenly decides that he's going to wage war on humankind because he has a problem with humans killing whales. Humans have been killing whales for a really long time. I don't know why Aquaman suddenly has a problem with it now. It's really strange that it happens at this moment when Superman decides there's not going to be any more war. So that was a little bit strange. And then Aquaman doesn't show up again after that conflict for the rest of this book. So I don't know if he plays a big part in the video game or not. I seem to recall there was an Aquaman versus Aquaman fight in the video game, but I don't know how big of a role he plays there. And I don't know if he plays a big role in some of the later comics set in between this and the video game. But it was really strange that Aquaman decides that this whale dying, that is going to be cause to start a big war, even though whales have been dying at the hands of humankind for a really long time. We also have Damian Wayne, who is a little turd in the series. I normally like Damian Wayne, but here he suddenly decides Superman is right. We need to all be tyrants. And then he kills Nightwing. By the way, spoilers here, sorry. But if you played the video game, you probably know that some of this happened. But anyway, he kills Nightwing, and then he's still mad at Batman. He still tries to to act like this is Batman's fault. At one point, he kind of seems like he's mourning for Nightwing, and then he still tries to throw it in Batman's face. Damian, screw you. You're stupid. But then Wonder Woman, she's kind of a bad guy here. I don't really understand why most of the Justice League members decide to throw in with Superman when he decides that he's going to start taking over the world. Now, like I said, it is a slow progression. If we started with Lois Lane dying, and then Superman goes and he murders the Joker, and then he calls a Justice League meeting and he says, I think we should take over the planet, I think more of these guys would say, no, I don't think that's a good idea. But once he kills the Joker, Batman pretty much instantly is like, okay, I can't throw in with Superman anymore. Now, they have a couple more conversations, and I do like that these two still seem to act like they're friends with each other. Even at the end of the book, and I know I'm spoiling stuff, but I won't spoil the big thing that happens at the end of the book, but even at the end of the book, we have a pretty big fight between these two, and I still get the feeling that these two kind of sort of respect each other, even with everything that's gone down, and I like that. I like that their friendship isn't thrown away. I don't necessarily have to have the conflict always be between Batman and Superman. I know that was something in the video game, so Tom Taylor was kind of stuck with that, but ever since The Dark Knight Returns, it seems like, okay, if you're going to have Superman do something a little bit questionable, then Batman has to be the one to confront him about it. I don't know why it always has to be Batman and Superman. Why couldn't it be Wonder Woman leading this team that's ideologically opposed to Superman? And I know that's something in the video game, so he was working with what he had, but still, I like Batman, but it doesn't always have to be Batman versus Superman. But anyway, why does Wonder Woman and literally everyone else in the Justice League throw in with Superman? Basically, you have Batman and Green Arrow who are both like, okay, this is not cool, and then literally everyone else is like, yeah, this is fine. At one point, Flash watches Superman break a kid's back, and then Flash thinks this is not okay, and then stays with Superman. At one point, Batman contacts Flash and says, I'm going to convince you that what you guys are doing is wrong. And then he shows Flash that this kid that Superman broke his back, he was actually a huge Justice League fanboy, and he specifically was a big fan of the Flash. And then what's Flash's responses to that? He goes and he runs on the Australian version of the Autobahn. He just decides to go take a run. He doesn't actually change his allegiance at any point in this book. Now, maybe he does later on. I don't know. I didn't actually get to see any of the Flash in the gameplay that I watched before I read this book, so I really don't know if Flash is still with Superman as of the events of the video game, or if he changes his allegiance at some point, but that seems like that should have either been taken out, or you should just rearrange it so that that event happens later on in this timeline. If you're going to have Flash eventually leave Superman, then you need to have him decide, you know, I'm going to leave. Superman broke that kid's back. That was not okay. And I guess they're doing this because there is a question of who is the mole in Superman's organization, because there's somebody who is helping out Batman. I'm 99% sure that it's Lex Luthor, because I believe in the game Lex was actually secretly helping Batman against Superman, so I'm pretty sure he's the mole. But if you've never played the game, you wouldn't know who the mole is, so maybe Flash is still with Superman so that you think that he's the mole, because he's the one out of all of Superman's group who kind of has second thoughts about all this. But why is he staying with Superman? Why is he okay with Superman breaking this kid's back? He feels bad about it, but then he stays with Superman. We need more of that. We need to know, why is Cyborg okay with everything that's going on? Why is Hawkgirl okay with it? Why is Hal Jordan okay with all this? And at one point, one of them says, Superman has helped all of us. He's been through all of this with us. He's been through a lot. We're going to stay with him. Okay, that excuse works to a point, but then once Superman decides, I'm literally going to take over the world, which he does at the end of this book, that's not the big thing that I was talking about earlier, but once Superman decides he's actually going to take over the world, I feel like some of these guys might say, this is too far, we need to go join Batman now. So anyway, I really like a lot of stuff in this book. I don't necessarily care for the premise itself. I don't like the idea of evil Superman, but if we have to have that, and it seems like we do, then I would like for it to be something like this. While the premise is not something I care for, I do like the way that this premise is handled, and I am very much interested in reading some of the later Injustice comics. So anyway, those are my very erratic thoughts on Injustice, Gods Among Us, the complete Year 1 collection thing. Hope that you guys liked this video, and if you did, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I'll be back later in the week with another video. In the meantime, you guys have a great rest of your day. Catch you later.